how to invest in Paraguay's real estate market, where to buy, what to do, what not to do. Today I'm joined here by a real estate investor. His name is Markus Amann. He is a citizen of Austria and he has lots of experience in this real estate market here. And hopefully you're going to get a lot of good information out of this video. Markus, let's start out talking about the best neighborhoods to live in, to maybe rent or even buy real estate.
So of course that is very, very individually different. So Asuncion is quite a big city nowadays, and when we talk about Asuncion, we usually mean the greater area of Asuncion. That includes the surrounding cities, coming from Luque, which is where the airport is, and all the other cities surrounding Asuncion, and as well Nueva Asuncion, that is now there newly on the other side of the river. So I'm not sure if there is this typical worst neighborhood where you shouldn't buy, because they're also doing a lot of effort and trying to make the neighborhoods better. What you can see for the last 10 or 15 years, at least since I'm here in Paraguay since 15 years, there are a lot of neighborhoods that are kind of stuck. They don't really improve or develop, and then there are these booming areas. So you have the two major booming areas, which is the area Las Lomas and Iguazati, which is where the Shopping del Sol and Paseo La Galeria is. This is where the tourists usually go because a lot of the hotels are there and the shopping malls. But in my view, the much better area and more booming area is Villamora, which we are here right now. It's kind of next door, but it's a little bit closer into downtown, into the city. So I've been there in the other area. And I relocated here because basically I figured out during the year and being there that basically everything I have to do here in Paraguay, I always had to come in that direction. So if I wasn't going to the airport, it always made me go into that direction. So now I save 10, 15 minutes of time in whatever I do usually. And I think this is a more central location, a more city center kind of spot. Mm-hmm. And it's picking up, the pace is picking up very quickly. So Villamora is becoming the new city center, the new downtown area. There are a lot of new buildings now here in this area. So I would say those two neighborhoods are probably the more fancy ones, and where the big buildings are made, the skyscrapers, the big investments, the shopping malls are, the banks, corporate buildings, hotels and everything. On the other hand, there is the intention of the government, but the intention has been there since 15 years to make the city center, like this old town, better. And the biggest problem with the Paraguayan old town, in my point of view, is the location, because since it is called center, but it's the old town, so the old city center, but it's kind of the border of the whole country, not just the city itself, because it's surrounded by the Paraguayan River and has Argentina next door. So everybody needs to go into this small fraction of an angle, and traffic is getting worse going there, and we don't have a lot of public transport in Paraguay. So we only have buses, but there's no train, there is no subway, and that makes it more difficult. So even if they pull it off to make the old town better, and I hope they will, that has some historic value, some culture and all that, but by bringing more people in, traffic is going to get worse into that direction. And I think the only chance for that, to really conserve and preserve this old town, will be to build another bridge from the old town to the other side to cross the river, and that would make it much better integrated and give it a much better boost and growth opportunity there. That's when it comes to the old town. But you have a lot of the government buildings there, but there's not much more. So of course, for tourists, you go there, you see the presidential palace, you have the old port, but there's not a lot of tourist attraction. And all the ministries are there, meaning from the court to the finance ministry to everything is all there. They built the container port, they moved out of the city and built all new buildings for ministries right there in the old town. So they want to make it better. They're making an effort, trying to put some cables underground, because Paraguay, most of the cabling is not underground, unfortunately, so far. Now they're starting to do that there in the old town. So you have seen it in other countries where the old town has been a mess, and then it got kind of cleaned up and is now much better and has the tourists. So that the fantasy is there. Maybe the potential is still there, but so far they didn't pull that off. So far still the booming regions are these two regions I just mentioned around the Shopping del Sol area and here in Villamora. And then you were asking about the areas not to go. I think in general here, you go a couple of blocks out, so it's quite a small environment, especially for foreigners who come in. If you go a couple of blocks outside to the surrounding cities, always, of course, there are some nice areas and less nice areas. But I would say the Paraguay in reality is more basic. So I always call this the bubble. So we are here in the fancy coffee shop or nice restaurant, hotel, the buildings and everything. And it's a small area that has these European or American kind of infrastructure vibe. But the reality, when you go a couple of blocks outside, it is definitely a more developing country, emerging country. It's poorer, it's more simple, the infrastructure is not as good. You have a lot of areas outside of Asuncion and even in parts of Asuncion where there is no canalization system there. Electricity might go out, even we have endless electricity because of the Itaipu Dam, the distribution network by the state-organized Ande-monopol is not done 100% properly, so you have all the time these type of situations. And then, you know, in Paraguay you have sometimes really nice pedestrian walkways or roads, but suddenly in front of you there's a hole and when you fall in, you're dead. It's just that steep. So, and so you have to be careful, you have to be aware, and there's no real logic to this. But it's all this combination of all these things. So what might be a nice neighborhood for you might be a bad neighborhood for somebody else. Or people usually grow up in their neighborhood and for them it's super nice. I wouldn't consider it particularly dangerous. Of course, I would not recommend walking around with an expensive handbag or something like that. And go on the street. Actually, the Rolex watch or something like that, I wouldn't be that afraid of because you can sell or purchase a lot of these fake stuff at the Brazilian border to Paraguay. So who knows if it's real or if it's fake. But in general, I mean, you have to be, generally, I would say people have their cars with the shades, you know, the windows are plotted like black so you cannot see in. You should not leave something in your car because somebody like spontaneously might break the window and take it. Or you hear a lot of these handy cell phones that get stolen on buses, for example. People steal that. But in general, I would say it's safe. But of course, at the same time, you need to be careful. But I wouldn't consider it more dangerous than maybe any European or American city. Actually, in part here, I would even say it's less dangerous maybe. But of course, you draw attention because you can immediately tell, okay, you come from wherever you come from Asia, from Europe, from the US. You look different,
right? So
that catches attention, and so you need to be careful.
I think this was a very balanced view on the good neighborhoods and also some of the things to be aware of. Now, what our clientele is usually looking for is to have the most access they can within the smallest proximity. Like if they come from the US, Canada, Europe, Australia to Paraguay, ideally they want to have everything that they need, or say 80% within a 10-minute walking distance.
If we think about it, what you mentioned, this being in a 10 to 15 minutes walking distance, if that's a criteria, I believe today the only place where you get that is Villamora. Because even in the other places you have big projects, but you have like 1 or 2 blocks behind there's residential neighborhoods, so there's not much going on there, and the walking distance become too wide, you need a car. But in Villamora, the way it's structured and now the way it's developing with all these buildings around the Mariscal Lopez shopping and the Bojani area and here, so here you can really walk. And I do it myself because it was one of the major reasons why I decided to move away from the Las Lomas, Shopping del Sol, Galleria area. They have the big mall and all the big buildings, but you always need the car and you always need to come here. But here you have a really 10 to 15 minutes surrounding like 7, 8 blocks, 10 blocks. You can walk and it's forming. It's like you can see how it's developing, and it's around the major crossing with Mariscal Lopez, which is one of the major streets in the country, and San Martin, which is the other major street. There is the biggest corporate building now under construction by the Sudameris Bank. So they are going to build 85,000 square meter of corporate tower. 5,000 people are going to work there. And I would say around 4 or 5 blocks around that area everything will be very walkable within, it's already very walkable, but it will get even better, and there will be more agglomeration within the next couple of years. And I think it's the only area right now in the city where this is really actually practically possible is here. And that's the reason I decided to relocate here, to have our office here and also live in that neighborhood, because it has this huge advantage, not just walking, but also the proximity to the old town. And if you want to move out of the city, you have all the accesses much better connected here in Villanueva.
Excellent. I agree with you. And as I have pointed out, our clients, and I'm sure many people who are watching this video, you guys are interested in coming here, and the first thought is obviously not owning a car. Like car ownership, it comes as a result of moving here more permanently. I want to touch on another very important point, because not everybody wants to live in the most developing zones of the city. There are some people that want to live on the outskirts of the city because they want to live more like a bit more of a laid-back lifestyle while still enjoying very close proximity to the best neighborhoods and shopping malls, right? What's your take on especially downtown Luque and downtown San Lorenzo? There are mixed opinions about that. Like people say, oh, those are the sketchiest downtowns within the metro. You shouldn't move there. Lots of bad things can happen. But then when you look at, for instance, the new area that's now developing just southeast of the airport, which is also part of Luque, in my opinion, that seems to be like a decent neighborhood that's developing there. Plus, when you drive there by car, you use the same road that you used to go to the airport. So in my opinion, I can see myself living there long term because it has a lot of interesting things. There's also a plaza there that's of very high standard, I would say. What's your opinion on these two specific neighborhoods?
So, of course, it's always a matter of budget, because when you are in the expensive neighborhoods here in town, it's more expensive than being a little bit further out. But the other thing is, what I would say, downtown San Lorenzo, my opinion is, I think it's too chaotic, and it is very difficult to make that work because of how the roads go through and everything. I would not want to live there. And when it comes to Luque, similar situation, but the area you mentioned close to the airport is much nicer, but there are gated communities. So if somebody comes from outside, I would only live, if I choose to live in a house, I would only live in a gated community or in an apartment. Those are the two options. Because I believe living in a house that is outside of a gated community, I don't know if it's dangerous, but it's an unnecessary risk that I wouldn't take. So that means you need 24-hour guard in front of your house, which is a quite huge expense. So it's much cheaper to have your house inside a gated community with 24-hour guards at the entrance, and that is much better. And you have that in that area close to the airport. Now, the airport is expanding, meaning we're going to get another terminal there and there will be more flights. It is a matter of what you want. I would not want to live next to the airport, for me.
Right.
So when it comes to this, I prefer the gated communities in Nueva Asuncion. They are closer, actually, than the ones in Luque. You also have the freeway coming into the city. They are about the same price or even maybe a little bit cheaper, and they're bigger and newer. So I would prefer, if I wanted to have a house, I would do it in Nueva Asuncion. Actually, I'm planning to build one there for myself in Nueva Asuncion inside a gated community. There are like 7 or 8 big gated communities in Nueva Asuncion where you can have that same thing, but you don't have the airplanes right next to you, and you have less traffic coming into town, and it's a little bit closer. And you still have the proximity to the airport itself. On the other hand, if you're outside of the gated communities, of course, Luque is much cheaper than Asuncion. It's also one of the reasons it is growing so much, because a lot of locals who feel it's too expensive in Asuncion, in the fancy neighborhood, they move there and they come in by car every day. So, but also traffic is rising. So if you come in, let's say at 7:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, it really can take half an hour, 45 minutes, up to 1 hour to get there, because you're having these rush hour situations already, because these cities keep growing, so the traffic keeps getting worse. And San Lorenzo downtown area, for me, I guess I would advise against it. I wouldn't do it.
And if you're watching this video and you're not here yet, you don't have to worry about being late now. This is still a great time to come here, invest. The tax situation in Paraguay will likely not change. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's going to stay pretty stable, because I don't see how the country would gain investors or would be able to thrive without the current tax system. that's just like my take, right? So I think this will stay in place for a long time and hopefully forever. Are there any final tips that you want to pass on to our audience where you would say, before you invest here, have a look at these things?
You know, it depends what you want. Do you want an income, or do you want an investment that gives you on a 5 to 10 year time frame a good return, and you don't need the monthly income? Because if you need the monthly income, that's most people go for apartments. There it's only a matter of choice of location. If I would buy an apartment, I would purchase in Villamora because it's a little bit cheaper than the area around Shopping del Sol, and I believe it will have a better traction from now onwards because of all the projects that are in the making in this area. And if I would purchase land to gain value, like kind of a land banking opportunity, what I'm doing is Nueva Asuncion. I'm investing there heavily. I'm a big believer in that because it's a very virgin area and it's right next to the old town, right next to the capital itself. And that's what I identified for me as a very unique opportunity. And but before doing something like that, I think always visit the country and understand the taxes and the regulation, and have a good notary to make sure that everything goes smoothly, whatever you decide to do.
Excellent. I think this is some great advice that you gave. I appreciate it. So if you guys are interested in coming here, you want to apply for Paraguayan residency, obviously Nomad Elite would love to handle this affair for you. You're welcome to contact us. And if you want to book a consultation with me personally, you can go to nomadelite.com. I appreciate it again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
And I look forward to having more conversations with you about the real estate market and the things that are important for people to consider before coming here. Thank you so much, Marcus.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. We see you on the next video and hopefully very soon here in Asuncion, Paraguay.